Hi, I'm Joseph Jobert, and very shortly we'll be joined by my co-host and a guest VIP. We'll discuss vital tech topics and thought-provoking issues. This podcast made possible by Secure Nation, a truly bespoke network security advocate and technology ally. Join us after the show as we apply critical thinking to the issues that the host and guest dredge up today. For my main topic that I'm going to bring up from the news, this was something that came up after Patch Tuesday. Microsoft released over 183 security flaws. I know I had brought it up on LinkedIn, and a lot of the people that responded said it wasn't that big of a deal because you could just patch them and update them. But to my issue, because some of these vulnerabilities were actually across every single Windows operating system ever. This may not seem like that big of a deal to most IT people who are working in the Windows 10, 11 environments. But on the operational technology side, we have stuff that's a little older than that. And for me personally, with someone who's very invested in the maritime domain, we've got vessels out there that are still running, XP and things, XP embedded, and just a lot of systems that aren't just vulnerable because they're landlocked. They're vulnerable, out there as they go from port to port and place to place. They don't just get patched today or tomorrow. They may not get patched or even seen by a technician for a month or so at a time. We'll talk more about this later. We'll let the VIP guest hit this a little bit harder. I'm going to introduce my guest now, Kylene. If we'd like to bring Kylene on, please.
Hi, I'm Kylene. I chose today to speak about some of the gaps in AI and how quickly it's being pushed out without being tested prior to it being pushed. I know that AI is a big topic right now. It's been around for a long time, but the demand is increased. So I wanted to talk about how we can balance demand with security.
Yeah, we're going to bring the guest on now. Mike is his master's in industrial control systems cybersecurity from SANS Technical Institute and has more than a few related certifications from both the IT and OT cybersecurity worlds, like GRID, GRID from the ISA and IEC 62443, expert, and he's got his CISP. His hobbies include creating content for LinkedIn and YouTube and playing video games. Kylene?
Mike Holcomb is a fellow of cybersecurity and the ICS OT Cybersecurity Global Lead of Fluor, one of the world's largest engineering, procurement, and construction companies. His current role provides him with the opportunity to work in securing some of the world's largest ICS OT environments, from power plants and commuter rail to manufacturing facilities and refineries. As a part of community efforts, Michael founded and runs the B-Sides ICS OT and B-Sides Greenfield conferences.
That's awesome. I guess let's bring him out.
Absolutely.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
That's awesome. Very glad you can be our first guest. I expect this to have some hiccups, but you're one of the people I look at on LinkedIn to keep me updated on the OT side. It's
very cool.
It's extremely, walking that line of IT and OT like I do, and I know there's a couple others like me. It's hard to stay updated on one, much less both. So I actually need people like you to keep doing what you're doing. And if anybody out there listening is not following Mike on LinkedIn, I highly recommend it.
I appreciate that. Thanks for the vote of confidence.
All right. We are about to jump straight into the wheel of criticality, or the gauntlet, as I like to call it. We're going to get to know you a little bit better after this, but we're going to start the show off pretty hot and heavy. My moderator, Ashley, is about to pull up a wheel that we're going to spin. And as soon as it stops, either myself or Kylene is going to call out the domain and give you 1 minute to discuss that, but not just bring it up as what that domain is, not that critical infrastructure topic, but what can you do to, what can you see us as a community, a nation, globally, to make it better, or just bring up issues that you see, um, or maybe good parts about it. What are they doing right? So we're gonna hit up all 16 as identified by CISA. All right, and I will call out this topic. All right, it looks like we're going to commercial facilities. All right, remove it. Oh, I guess it'll just stay on. From now on, though, we're going to remove it after. That way it just goes down by one. So, Mike, if you can please start us off by talking about commercial facilities as we see.
Or yeah, I mean, commercial facilities is kind of a little bit of a strange sector, I think, for a lot of people, right? Because it's mostly focuses on public places where people congregate and go. So it's everything from sports stadiums to shopping malls. Those are usually some of the more common examples that you'll see. So from an OT or ICS perspective, you usually start thinking of things like building management systems, security systems, right? Making sure the physical security of those sites, right, exist, right? So you think of things like CCTV, right? Being able to monitor, of course, having, door badge systems to make sure that people aren't getting into restricted areas that they shouldn't. So yeah, not a ton of OT ICS in the sector, but there's definitely some there.
We say there's not a ton, but there's a lot of things, and I love that this may be like our first lob, our first softball, but there, I mean, just you brought up the badges and stuff, but there's HVAC and things. There's a good bit when we really start diving into it, which we don't have to. But this may be one of the more thought-provoking domains, because there is actually a good bit when you really break in to which part a stadium itself, the hot water that they have, the facilities in some of these stadiums are really impressive.
Sure. I mean, there's definitely some there. It's just it's going to be much more limited than other sectors, right? There's a big
How do you
difference
see
between
this
those.
going forward? Because I know in some facilities we have remote HVAC systems that control AC units and stuff like that. And this isn't going to walk itself backwards. We're going to keep, going forward with remote. We're going to keep combining systems to where like one person or one automated system may be controlling all stadiums or all malls or all public commercial building type deals. That seems like a pretty big footprint to secure.
It depends, on the situation. A lot of the individual stadiums are all managed locally, but you do have, what if a management company all of a sudden wants to have it, accessible via the cloud for, remote control, remote administration? Then you're expanding your attack surface, right? So you see a lot of, additional risk that are brought in. So that's really up to the owners and the operators of these environments to determine, is that risk acceptable? And if it is so, then okay, go for it. But hopefully they have the team members, or at least they're working with some consultants to, as they implement these new solutions and these new advantages, that they're making sure they do it as securely as possible.
Oh. All right, Kylene, what are you going to get for him?
All right, let's see here.
Ooh.
Government services or financial service sector. Sorry, someone.
Remove.
Yeah. So financial services is much, there's very little OT there. It's almost all purely an IT play, I would say, for the most part. When you do get into like some type of OT perspective, kind of like you were mentioning earlier, that's where I would go to thinking of things like air conditioning, and HVAC controls in data centers, which, for server farms that different financial institutions are using. So obviously, if we had a meltdown in data centers and on those systems, and banks start, crumbling or the financial sector was to fail. Think of issues with the stock market. There's definitely all those national security considerations that come into play. So, but there's not really the financial services world. There's not a lot of OT or ICS where we're moving things out in the real world. So maybe at the bank drive-through, if they still have like the tubes where they send your money over through the pneumatic tube to your car. I don't know if those still exist. Maybe
Just
somewhere.
remove it this time if you can. Can you hear remove? Nice. All right, third sector. Let's see what we get. Right, all right. We can remove this one too. Sorry, y'all. This the wheel of criticality. Oh no, this is a new one. Okay, I thought I was gonna get the commercial one. So communication sector. Whew, this is something we could talk about for hours, I'm sure, but we only have a minute.
Communications, I think from an OT ICS perspective, very similar to financial services. There's just not a lot of OT ICS. I think what you see is it goes back to making sure if you have equipment rooms, server rooms, you have things like temperature and humidity under control. I worked for a telecom for a couple years. So there's just not a ton of OT or ICS there. A lot of theirs is just making sure equipment stays up and running, so you have the connectivity to move packets from point A to point B. Yeah, emergency services is kind of very similar to telecom communications. There's just not a ton of OT ICS out there. Of course, we're worried primarily about communications, making sure people can call 911, make sure that all the different first responders have the ability to receive calls, get dispatched. They need directions, they need additional information, communication amongst themselves. It does, make me think of when Russia had just, this last invasion of Ukraine, when they went in, that group of attackers that were aligned with Russia had taken out a satellite that was responsible for communication, not only with the army, but first responders locally. So there definitely are some concerns there, but I think it's mostly around communication.
All right. So this one these are going so fast. Chemical sector.
Yeah, chemicals is an important one because you think we don't want to have an explosion at some type of petrochemical facility where they're using chemicals which could hurt or potentially kill somebody. So I think always back to the East Palestine train derailment where we saw that mushroom cloud of chemicals, right, that killed wildlife and made people sick, and there was an impact for miles and miles around. So you do not want to have an explosion in one of these facilities, like there was one in the US in actually 2024, that there's actually a lot of circumstantial evidence that it was actually caused by a cyber attack. So yeah, healthcare, public health. We always talk about primarily hospitals, making sure hospitals have the services that they need to be able to operate, right? So they're very dependent on other sectors like energy, right? They need power, they need water, right? So if you don't have power, if you don't have water, if you don't have the power to heat, different elements to sterilize water and sterilize utilities or tools, then you're not doing things like operations. You have essentially no operating ER. So yeah, your hospital doesn't exist without those services. So a lot
as we move up to this, do radiation machines count as OT? And when we get into AI surgeons and all this stuff, is that going to fall under OT?
Yeah, when you think of anything that moves in the real world, and is controlled or automated by a computer, that's going to be operational technology. That's going to be OT. So yeah, so if you have some radiation machines, or probably the better example is an MRI, right? So that MRI machine does have magnets, right, and other components that are controlled and moved around by a computer, right? And so yeah, that's kind of usually when you talk about operational technology, you usually are talking OT usually refers to a lot of hospitals or medical devices, things like an insulin pump, right? Still controlled by a computer. Cars, right, are controlled by lots of little computers at this point, and then pretty much everything else falls in the ICS or the industrial bucket.
Ooh, water and waste management.
Yeah, wastewater, that's a big one that a lot of people overlook. And I would say many of the owners and operators of the environments also overlook cybersecurity in those environments, unfortunately. Now many are really small mom and pop shops that they'll never have the resources to do anything about cybersecurity, unfortunately.
That is very unfortunate.
It is, but that's unfortunately that's the majority of environments out there in OT ICS. Sadly, in my day job, I get to work with some of the largest companies in the world and some of the world's largest environments, and they invest heavily in their cybersecurity programs in OT and ICS. But unfortunately, the vast majority of OT and ICS environments and wastewater are definitely some of those that they're just so small. They'll just never have the budget to be able to tackle OT or ICS cybersecurity.
A minute just isn't enough. Oh goodness.
Yeah, defense industrial base, that's everything from I always think of military bases. In my day job, we actually ran all the bases in Afghanistan and Iraq for years. And so you have lots of interesting issues that pop up. Mostly you're worried about terrorists launching RPGs at satellite dishes on roofs and suicide bombers climbing over your fence. Those are really your biggest concerns. There's not a lot of OT or ICS. Most everything there is going to be IT related for the vast majority. Of course, you can get into conversations around things like weapon systems, which is starting to get a little bit more visibility in OT ICS cyber these days.
All right. This is one of my favorites. Food and agriculture. Okay, yeah, Kylene, take this one. I forget. This is what we brought Kylene on for, and how I met Kylene in the first place.
Yep, on how AI could be used in some of the food and agriculture industries, and how it could really tie in to where we're going at as a nation.
Yeah, there's not a lot of visibility around cybersecurity in food and agriculture. A friend, Kristen DeMorinville, she has the Bites and Bites podcast, and she's done a lot of great work and help elevate the awareness around the need for cyber and food and ag, because we all like to have food on the table to eat. And it's very concerning, to say the least. Some of the stories I've heard are really scary. How close we are to very unsafe conditions, and a lot of people getting a lot of very sick really fast.
And sick is taking it lightly. There's vulnerability reports my friends and I ran several years ago about the autonomous tractors and things like that. Oh dang, next sector. I think we can take this one off. We did it in the beginning.
The stadiums and shopping malls.
Yeah. All right, it's getting smaller and smaller.
No, transportation's always fun.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah, I do. We have a couple, large rail projects. We do a lot of like subways in a couple of the large cities, especially in the United States. Some high-speed rail outside of the U.S. So yeah, I mean, just when you think about the whole point of trains is getting people from point A to point B, safely, number one, and then on time, right? Which is also the next biggest concern for rail operators. And so you want to make sure that yeah, that train that's barreling down the tracks at let's say 55, 60 miles per hour and is coming up at the curve, that it slows down in turn, in time. And what if all of a sudden the operator is not paying attention for whatever reason, that we have systems like positive train control that can understand, oh, train's going too fast, we're approaching this curve, will automatically slow down the train and keep everybody safe. So
Yeah, the trains alone are getting more advanced, to put it lightly. Dang it. Next topic. Oh, we didn't take this one off last time. They go so fast. Phew. All right. Only a couple left.
A couple good ones though. A couple
Yeah.
good ones and a couple bad ones. So
Okay, we were talking about this in the beginning, off air.
yeah, nuclear is definitely probably the one area where people have the most questions, right? It's like, can attackers get into a nuclear power plant and cause a meltdown or a mushroom cloud to be over your city? And the chances of something like that happening are 1 billion to 1, if not higher. I have quite a few friends that are so the leading energy experts in the world, and I've even asked those questions because I want to make sure I relay that. I have the same questions that everybody else does, and it's just like most true industrial control environments, that there are physical fail safes that are built into these environments. So even if all of your computers and all of your automated controls fail, the environment still stays safe.
Sure, there's a sigh of relief there.
Right. So critical manufacturing, yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between if I'm manufacturing tennis balls and baseballs versus like in my day job, we built the world's largest insulin manufacturing plant, right?
Wow.
And insulin is still in a shortage globally, right? So imagine what would happen if that plant went down because of something like ransomware for a day or a week, or we see Jaguar Land Rover right now. They had plants down for 5-6 weeks, with hundreds of thousands of people not working. That's absolutely devastating for a number of reasons. So there's a huge impact.
Yeah, a number. We when we talk about this, sometimes we look at it from the business side. An hour, even 30 minutes down is millions of dollars, but you're bringing up insulin. And, to heck with the business owners and how much money they're losing. This is people's lives and stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Potentially people could get extremely sick and potentially die. Yeah.
Ooh, power grid time.
Yeah. Energy's a big one. Of course, in the OT ICS world, they're the sector that's the most advanced, we would say, from a cybersecurity perspective, because they do, at least, and I should clarify, I'm referring to North America right now, because there is regulation for power generation. So if you have a power plant or power transmission, and so there has been regulation. Now it's kind of like, especially for folks from an IT cyber background, those regulations are a lot like kind of PCI, maybe when they were in like their second or third draft. So, are they the greatest, as far as locking down your environment? No, but is it better than nothing? Absolutely.
Definitely.
So yeah, thankfully, a lot of the power operators, that operate these plants, they do have, typically more resources, and they do invest. So they typically will go above and beyond what they're required to legally do, and make their environments, much more secure. No one wants to black out.
Yeah, they're such a big target.
They are a target for sure. I don't know
Yeah,
if they're a huge target, but well, there's a lot to be
yeah,
said. Yeah, but so government services and facilities. I mean, that's kind of that's like the Capitol building or courthouse. So that goes back to you're still like more building management system
mhm,
type controls. So HVAC, door badging systems, elevators.
yeah.
Those are the things you would see
That's
there.
that's a good point. A lot of people forget about it. I even forget about elevators all the time.
Yeah, elevators and escalators and yeah, anything that moves out in the real world that's controlled by a system. And when you talk about buildings, that's where you have specific types of ICS or OT called building management systems or
Like
BMS
the fire
that even
suppression
have
systems and stuff. There's
yeah, for
do you
sure.
see that very often where fire suppression systems are part of the OT plans and stuff? Because I know in
Yeah, a lot of
vessels,
times.
okay,
A lot of times, yeah, you have, safety as part of the overall package. Yeah, for
nice.
sure. Yeah. Now it's not like in the movie Hackers, if anybody's seen that back in 1995, that, where they trigger the sprinklers to go
Mhm.
off. No one's triggering sprinklers, boy, I
Yeah,
can't, sprinklers to go off.
triggering and
But
disabling are, I mean,
uh,
that's equally as bad in a lot of
yeah,
cases.
what if I could, yeah, make it so that your fire alarms never go off, right?
Hmm.
Obviously not good, especially if terrorists wanted to start a fire or cause an explosion. So
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, dams is an interesting one because they don't get a lot of visibility, but there was
no.
a dam a couple of it was about 2 months ago now in Norway um, that um, got hit, and they had a system that was exposed to the internet, and the attackers logged in. They opened up the floodgates, and the floodgates were open for like full force for about 4 hours
Holy
before
cow.
anybody realized it. So yeah, I like the
I,
example because I like the incidents where it's like something bad happened, so there's an impact in the real world, but
mhm.
no one's hurt, no one was killed. We learned from our lesson. Hopefully, we move on, and that we can adjust and protect ourselves from these things from happening again.
I personally
Unfortunately,
forget about dams quite a bit. In my mind, I think Hoover Dam, hydroelectricity, it falls under power, but there's dams cover so much more than just hydroelectric creation or generation.
yeah, I mean the biggest concern was if you lost power generation in a facility like you think the Hoover Dam, yeah, and then all of a sudden Vegas doesn't have all the electricity that it needs to power all those massive lights, and just the sphere alone, So yeah, it's no one wants a blackout.
No. Last
And
one.
the last one is information and technology services, which is it really is like a pure IT play. I mean, it's literally the sector, right?
Well,
So,
yeah, and
but
this to me is one of the heaviest, the hardest hitting ones because several years ago we would never have thought too heavily on, IT side is their world, OT and ICS and everything is, those guys they know what they're doing. We know what we're doing. Let's keep it, separated. But then that terrible word convergence came about several years ago, and well, things just
yeah,
kind
it's
of got.
just the more connectivity that you have, right, between the two, you're extending your attack surface. You're introducing more risk, and if you're not prepared to protect against those risks, then things like what we see with Jaguar and Land Rover happening right now that are going to happen, unfortunately. So,
Yeah. I I think we made it through that.
that wasn't too bad.
No. So
That was
next
fantastic.
we're gonna start getting to know you a little better. How was that?
Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, yeah, I mean 16. Yeah, I mean it went pretty quick though.
Yeah, me personally, I'd like to just do that for a whole day. Just go through all that kind of stuff. But that's like I was telling you in the beginning. Hopefully, this whole thing is there to spark conversation with
Sure.
after the show we go in on LinkedIn in the Discord server, that the Cubic Quorum Discord server, and we get to talk to people just getting into cybersecurity, just getting into OT. Maybe they're doing help desk stuff, and this brings up questions that they never even thought to ask. And we get to talk to them. We get to mentor them about whole domains that they never even realized were connected. And that's really the beauty of something like this, because I know when I was starting out, 25. Oh my gosh, I'm getting old.
We all are. Everybody is. But.
Pre-military time, I never thought that I would fall in love with the maritime at all. That I never thought a boat floating in the middle of the ocean would even have computers on it. Never even knew.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it was brought up to me while I was helping my stepdad, who's an ROV pilot. He operates robots underneath the water, and I was talking to him about cybersecurity, and then we started connecting the dots back, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much more interesting than keeping a building secure. So that's where my passion started going. But I would have never known if he didn't introduce me to critical infrastructure and all the other stuff out there, because enterprise is enterprise. It's I don't want to call it two-dimensional, but
it is kind of like once you've been in one, you've kind of been in all of them. Where critical infrastructure, ICS or OT environments are very, very different. Some people will say you've been in one power plant, you've been in all of them, but they still are all different and unique in their own ways, for sure. So
okay, we're gonna. Do you remember the stuff Kylene and I talked about when we first started the show?
You're talking about Windows updates?
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, so Windows updates, and of course AI and kind of where we're at today with AI and a lot of the concerns, or maybe the lack of
topic I brought up. If you don't, I'd like to get your insight on it. The Windows had quite a few vulnerabilities this week. And my biggest one is the vulnerabilities where they let us know all operating systems are vulnerable. And I can get the details unless you already know them.
I'm pretty familiar. I actually still oversee the vulnerability management program for my day job, and we have about 35,000 computer users. So I do get to go through the list every month. Honestly, Bleeping Computer does an awesome job on the second Tuesday of every month, where they actually put out their overview of the patches. So definitely leverage that a lot these days. Ever since they started doing that, they do a really good job of you see, there's like 150 vulnerabilities patched this month, right? Which is that's an average month, and then they'll talk about 8 criticals and X amount that are remotely exploitable, and it's like but you have to go through each one individually just to look to see how it applies in your environment, right? A lot of the vulnerabilities aren't going to apply to a lot of folks. They're just not going to have those specific types of specific applications in their environment.
The two big ones that Windows has that they announced to the world was CVE 2025 24990 and 59230, which are both elevation of privilege vulnerabilities. And you're familiar with the ICS landscape. It's not just Windows 10 and Windows 11 quick patch type issues we're looking at. Is CVEs like this actually things to worry about in environments where we can't just turn around and apply patches? And then
you have to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, what's the what's a type of landscape, like a chemical plant, or I guess nuclear? I don't know enough about it to say, but what would the biggest at-risk ICS landscape be, OT landscape be?
Like from a Windows perspective?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, do we worry about the specific Windows vulnerabilities? Again, you have to look at them each one at a time and see how that applies in your environment. There are very few Windows vulnerabilities that are considered, I think, critical by many. I think we see them about once every 12 to 18 months. I
Mhm.
would say, and then there's one that it's going to be, yeah, the big bad, and it's wormable, so you want to make sure nobody's going to, take down the environment, in the blink of an eye, um, or just take complete control over the network, in a split second. So those you jump on, but a lot of people don't realize, hey, if you go into like a power plant. I mean, the first time I went into a power plant, it was like 2012, and I had no idea. The plant manager is like, "Oh, let me show you around," and he takes me into the control room. So you see all the dashboards and the blinking lights and the big red button you can push to shut everything down safely. And he's like, "Oh, we'll go into the data center and we'll show you. These are where our domain controllers are." I was like, "Domain controllers?" I was like, "Well, I know like a million ways to, take over a domain controller." And then he's like, "Oh, here's our data historians," and where they basically store telemetry data of like how the plant operates. It's kind of like a sim for, gathering all the information about how your plant operates. And but that's for a lot of environments, it's a Windows server running Microsoft SQL Server. Um, or it's like some custom built job or some prepackaged like database application. But you see Windows everywhere in OT and ICS environments, and a lot of people don't realize that. So there's usually, when we talk about the risk, and again, and this is almost every environment, that you think when attackers get in, the vast majority of the time they're coming through IT, right? So an attacker gets in and they move from IT into OT. All they're doing is moving from Windows machine to Windows machine to Windows machine, right? And then once they have that foothold in your OT network, let's say power plant, then they can, just like in IT, right? It's real quick, right, to take full
Mhm.
control over all the Windows systems, right? That's not hard. Um, that's what we call phase one attacks, right? So again, it's mostly just like those IT based attacks, right? You're just moving from commodity operating system to commodity operating system, Windows to Windows. Again, maybe there's some Linux in there, but once you have control over all of those systems in the OT network, then where attackers get stopped, though, is they actually come against the true control system. So things like programmable logic controllers, PLCs, or human machine interfaces, HMI. So it's like a little GUI and screen that shows us what's going on, right? While that PLC, it's responsible for controlling the things out in the real world. So attackers get into the environment and they have control over all of these Windows systems, but they don't know what any of these control systems are actually doing. So then they have to start from scratch, right, to reverse engineer the environment to understand even maybe what type of environment they're in. They might not even know what they're in, let alone, okay, I see this one system, but what does it control out in the real world? It's really,
And this has helped us up until this generation, up until now, to keep things safe. But now we're looking at malicious actors, state actors, all the ranges of people. They've got AI in their pocket. There's AI tools being built that load up CVEs to exploit like a machine gun. Um,
yeah, but you also want to think in the OT world or ICS, yes, you have vulnerabilities, CVEs on systems, for hardware, software vulnerabilities. They still have all of those. But honestly, a lot of times those aren't the issues and the risk that I'm worried about. A lot of these systems still run things like unauthenticated protocols. So you can actually just connect to one of these systems like a PLC that's controlling a process out in the real world, right? If I have a power plant,
mhm.
right, I'm spinning some type of turbine, right, to spin a generator to create electricity. Well, what if, I can get onto the system that impacts that process and make it so that turbine actually heats up over time, or maybe physically breaks down. If you actually lost that turbine, there's a 3-year waiting list to replace it.
Holy cow.
What's going to happen, right, if you lost that, right? And just shut down that part of the power plant for 3 years. That actually is exactly what's going to happen, right? So yeah, there's that the idea of the impact and how attackers, once they're in an environment, they do work to reverse engineer the environment, and yeah, AI can definitely help with that for sure. And of course, AI, it's only getting exponentially better every day. So it's the worst it's going to be is today, and it's only going to keep getting better, right? For better or for
Yeah.
worse. So
And that's when it was when they were starting to be used as tools to where somebody can upload schematics and stuff that they found online, and now they've got a quick helper in their pocket. That was scary. But now type in a couple prompts and they have very little actual user knowledge, but these tools are putting things together that used to be hallucinations, and now they're pretty hyper focused, and it's just
they're
getting scarier.
yeah, they're still a year or two away from
Mhm.
being where they need to be from a defensive and an offensive perspective. I'm friends with
It's
some of
getting there
the
though, and that's
the big OT ICS experts and the ones that focus on AI, and we're about a year or two, but we're not ready for the attacks we're seeing today. And we're definitely not going to be ready for what we're going to be seeing in a year or 2 or
I'm
5
I'm
down
personally
the road.
thankful for data diodes. I wish we would see more IT side, but I really love them on the OT side because it's gonna be one of those things that do keep us more protected in that that bubble, that gap that separates those worlds. But we have
Yeah,
some nice tools
unfortunately,
and toys.
yeah, you don't see them in a lot of environments. And yeah, for folks that don't know, a data diode is it's kind of like, in a way, it's like a firewall that you would put between two network segments, but it actually is all hardware based. It's all
Mhm.
physics, where it only allows you to send traffic in one direction. There's no possible way for traffic to come back. So, like if I have a power plant, I can take data from the power plant and send it to IT, the business side. So that way the business understands, okay, we generated this much power. We know, okay, we're going to make this much money. We used this much natural gas and water to generate that electricity. So we know how much in resources we had to pay, that type of information. Um, and yeah, there's no reason for IT to talk with OT. Unfortunately, a lot of environments, they're just not designed that way because they don't know better. And then there are some environments like manufacturing where a lot of manufacturing plants, they don't start actually manufacturing or producing a certain product until they get an order from the IT side. So you have to let IT talk to OT. So in that case, yeah, you unfortunately you don't have that type of separation. So it's one of those convergence things that
Yeah.
where it opens up the attack surface, unfortunately, exponentially, and puts a lot of these environments at risk. Again, and I go back to Jaguar Land Rover, but it's an excellent example of an environment where there definitely are risks between IT and OT, and you can tell in their environment they didn't have a clue as to anything to what they were doing, unfortunately.
Mm. I'd love to keep these going. And again, we can, if you want to join us in the Cubic Quorum server. If not, I think we'll probably talk about this stuff on LinkedIn as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And our next show is on next Friday, so we have 7 days to talk about so much that you've unpacked, and I really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
No, definitely.
Your time is appreciated as well. Usually on closing, I'd ask that if you have any charities or anything you'd like to spotlight, if you have anything you'd like to shout out or just whatever.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate.
Floor is
Yeah, I
yours.
appreciate that. I mean, for folks, just to encourage folks, I focus locally on groups that help, especially women and children in domestic abusive situations. and suffering a lot of different issues. There's a lot of great charities locally that people can work with, and then maybe on a little lighter side, to throw out B-Sides ICS. So a lot of people are familiar with B-Sides, from the IT world. And folks like Jack Daniel and running the B-Sides conferences globally. I run the B-Sides conference here in Greenville, South Carolina, but we actually started B-Sides ICS this year. Earlier in February, had our first event, and in 2026, we're going to already have, I think we already have 6 events globally, from London, Miami, Singapore, 2 in Australia. I mean, it's really exciting to see. So it brings that B-Sides community look and feel to the OT-ICS world, which is something that is really sadly lacking in the OT-ICS world. So it's really really great to see. And I'm really excited to the future. So if folks are interested in learning more about, ICS or OT, we'd love to have you. But and then definitely, feel free to check me out on LinkedIn, YouTube, and I'm all about, helping people learn OT ICS.
So I thought Kylene along the way had lost connection or something, but she's still here.
I am. Sorry
Kylene-
about that. I turned off my camera. I was having technical difficulties. It was distracting. You're much more important, so I decided to take my camera off here. But I do two additional questions. So the first one, I wanted to go over the IT. Or for the security and AI browsers in relation to IT, and kind of what your take is on that. And for me, I think that as long as AI is going to continue to be implemented, it's going to be like any other software that has to be patched, has to have, consistent maintenance done on it. So that's where I think, as far as it going commercially and being available, you see Microsoft doing Copilot, you see, companies start to develop their own AI. Several companies are pushing it. People want to get on board, but they're not really sure what they're getting sometimes. And it's definitely not laid out in a user-friendly way when somebody's trying to sell you AI. So where do you see some of the biggest gaps in AI?
Yeah, AI is a big space. Obviously, I think there's still a lot of people that are afraid of using it because I think they're just afraid of it taking their job. But I think whoever said you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're just going to lose your job to somebody using AI. They were brilliant when they came up with that, because I think that's really really true. So if people aren't using it today, they need to be. And I would say the attackers are much further ahead, in using AI to do their job much better than we are as defenders. So I think we as the defenders have a lot to catch up. But again, it is like any platform, right? It brings a lot of risk, and it brings a lot of risk that a lot of people just don't realize that exists. And it's one of those, I think, like anything, and we even see this in OT or ICS, until something really, 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 really bad happens, most people are not going to pay attention. And so it is going to take something really, 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 really bad to happen for folks to actually sit up and it's like, oh, we should actually think about these things. So there's a lot of good uses for AI. There's a lot of bad uses for AI. There's a lot of bad things and vulnerabilities in AI, and how it can be manipulated, or just even the fact that if somebody can access think of, if somebody gets into ChatGPT and they can look at all of your conversations, right, and your prompts with ChatGPT, right? That's probably not something that you want the world necessarily seeing. Think if you're working on, I don't know, some intellectual property, right? Or you're like working on some program or some chemical formula. It's just information that you don't want out in the world. Or I saw the other day we're talking about ChatGPT is going to start letting people sext on ChatGPT. I'm like, don't think I would would want anybody to read my ChatGPT conversations then, right? It just anything you put in it, it's out on the cloud, and it's just like any other cloud environment. It's going to get popped, right? And it's
This
just a
is
matter of time.
great conversation right there. For goodness, Ashley, when did we start working with generative AI? Like 2021, 22? We've been against, and everybody who uses it love it. Go to Hugging Face. There's a whole other world out there to get into. But the Cubic Quorum and all the people that Kylene and I work with, we've gone into sandboxing AI, and we've been doing that for years.
Yeah, that's a great approach.
Olama is one of our favorite tools. Build a computer, build server. You don't have to use ChatGPT.
Right.
That's not the only tool out
For
there.
sure.
Protect your data, because there's reasons these things are free or low cost.
Absolutely.
Everything you give them, they're using to improve their systems, and you don't have to. Olama is fantastic because it's lightweight. You can cut it off. You can use AI in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, for sure.
And just build your own stuff if you want, so you can fortify.
Yeah, exactly. It's like anything. If you put it in the cloud, right, it's exposed. So yeah, if you can build your own local instance, I know Clint Bodungan has his cybersecurity, like the AI cookbook. That's a great resource for, here's how to do these things and build it out locally. So, and then just secure that. So yeah.
Yeah, what you were bringing up, Kylene, with AI in the browsers, though, that's it's gonna be hard to get away from. They love it. I started using Comet from Perplexity, and honestly, I don't see the benefit so much. And no offense, Perplexity, it's a nice tool. I just for what's available, I'm gonna probably just keep using my Olama setup, and we use other tools. We use Galaxy.ai so that every time something new and fresh comes out, we can test it, we can trial it, we can demo it, and then not have to worry about licensing or anything. Galaxy.ai takes care of all that for us, and then we bring it all off to the side and work on it separately. But having cookies and everything, having someone take the little bit of data that's there is worrying enough. But now that you're putting code that I have no clue what you're doing in my browser, that's got access to so much, it's not just scary, it's creepy. I mean, you're setting up man-in-the-middle attacks that go beyond what a human can do. So awesome.
It's funny because
Be scared, be not scared.
but people,
You can only be so
started
paranoid.
first when they said, we want to put cookies in your browser, or we want to put JavaScript in your browser, right? It's creepy and you can't do it. It's like, well, we all live with it, and it's the same is going to happen here, right? It's the cat's out of the bag, the horse is out of the barn, whatever the expression is, but it's going to happen, whether we want it or not from a security perspective. So it's okay, you're going to have this, so how do we make it as secure as possible?
Yeah, at least with Perplexity and Comet, I know what they're doing. They're fairly transparent in their mission objectives and everything. But to Kylene's, what she was talking about, it's Edge and everything else that's trying to sideload AI into their browsers.
Because they're pushing their own flavor of AI, right? So, yep, for sure.
Directly integrating it.
Yep. And they're still, the one thing we saw at the day job, and because we're very strict about people uploading any type of content to the internet, just in anything, even like some type of like language translation system, because we deal with a lot of proprietary information for clients. And someone noticed now, right, you can go to Google, if you just go to google.com, and now not only does it bring up like the AI output for a search, but then it actually now integrates with the ChatGPT interface. So like, what business doesn't allow google.com for research, but you're probably blocking ChatGPT from your employees for going there. But now it's like, oh, okay, you can go to Google and at least have access to like Gemini. So yeah, it's interesting to see. So I'm curious to see how we're going to address that.
Awesome. Mike, Kylene, I really appreciate y'all. If anybody wants to keep the conversations going, we've got Cubic Quorum. You can go to cubicquorum.com. The link to join the Discord's in there. And if you want to learn more about it, just everything's on the website. You can find both Mike and Kylene on LinkedIn. Mike, you said you have a YouTube page too?
Yeah, if you just search for Mike Holcomb, or it's
Okay, I didn't
called
know that.
UtilSec. Yeah, so I have bunch of courses out there for free around OT, ICS, cybersecurity. So I have a 25
Awesome.
plus hour introductory course. There's a 10-hour OSINT course for OT. I'm releasing 2 courses at the same time. Not sure how that happened, but one for OT pen testing. I just released part 4 today, actually. And then there's a course on 62443, which is the big framework on how we protect OT ICS environments. It's kind of like the ISO 27001 of the ICS world.
Heck yeah, it is.
Well, you just gained a follower.
I appreciate
Say
that.
no more.
Fantastic. All right. I'd like to end this. We'll sign off, everybody. This is the last part of the show. We do a segment where we spotlight those on LinkedIn land that are looking for work. And I'm going to start it off by saying this year has been brutal. I'm seeing people that I never thought in my life would have to look for work, because if they were ever on the market, 20 companies should be scooping them up. This year, I don't know what's going on, but some of the most talented people I've ever met or thought of meeting in my life. Like, we know Einsteins, we know, the Alan Turings and everything of the world, but there's people in my network that are just as brilliant as these people, and they're looking for work, which blows my mind. Today, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite people, which is Sarah Spencer. Her LinkedIn is linkedin.com/in/Sarah, SARAM, Spencer, SPENCER, and we'll have it in the comments and everything like that. We'll share her. She started working with me and Ashley a long time ago. She's done so many amazing things. She's created valuable tools. She works in the AI space. She works in cyber. She's just everywhere all at once, doing anything you can think of with security. And she's light years ahead of so many other people I've met. Check her out if you have any room on your teams. She's amazing. That's it for the show. Again, Kylene, Mike, you guys were fantastic.
Thank you, Mike.
Hopefully we see y'all again on the show.
Yeah, thank you
Point,
both.
Kylene, I'd love to have you as a guest host again.
Yep, I will fix my camera, I
actually-
promise. I'm so sorry, you guys.
All good. Yeah, that's it. Y'all take it easy.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everybody. Yeah, have a good one.
Bye.
All right, take care.
Ooh,
Okay.